Oh, what a day! What a lovely day!
Welcome to the Mad Max Minute Podcast, the daily podcast where we break down Mad Max 1 minute at a time. I'm Rick.
And I'm Julia.
And today we're talking about minute 38, which begins with Toecutter firing his shotgun, and it ends with Bubba Zanetti criticizing Johnny's style. So, we pick up where we left off yesterday, with Mudguts just putting his face all over that mannequin in just the most distressing style.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, I was looking through the continuity error page on IMDb, and I noticed an interesting detail about this mannequin that they've been just getting all up on for the last couple of minutes in the movie. And according to IMDb, the mannequin is named Polystyrene.
That's wonderful.
Because
I just like that they gave her a name. I mean, she goes through a lot in the very short time that she's on screen. I mean, she gets molested and shot in the face. So the very least they could do is give her a name.
It's adorable that they would give this fleshless mannequin a name when they wouldn't give, like...
Yeah, that just
how many other
to
women in this movie have names? And they gave a name to the mannequin?
Yeah, the woman who actually gets raped doesn't get a name. But a mannequin gets a name.
Yeah. Way to go, 1979.
Yeah.
Way to go.
Very 1979. We also get, I think, maybe a partial line, maybe the first half of the line was in the previous minute, but it's Kundalini commenting about the skillfulness of his hands.
Yes.
He should have been a surgeon. And I just thought it was funny that he later on loses one of those hands.
I was say, if joining a motorcycle gang killed his dreams of going to medical school and becoming a skilled surgeon, I think having one of his hands ripped off by a station wagon definitely killed that dream.
Yeah.
He's not going to bounce back from that like, Doctor Strange in the Marvel movies or anything like that.
Yeah. Yeah, he certainly is no Doctor Strange.
Well, I mean, he's strange, but he's not a doctor. So they're carrying on over by the mannequin. Meanwhile, Toecutter is just sitting there watching this all, and he kind of pulls his, baked potato blanket off of his head, and then he gets everyone's attention by firing the shotgun that he's holding up into the air. Which, I have to say, if you need to get everyone's attention, you can whistle, you can shout, or, shoot a firearm into the air, and everyone in that whole scene just drops silent. It's like a seashell. If you hold it up to your ear, you can hear this scene, making the sound of the ocean, because that's all we get after that shot.
So he shoos away Mudguts and has Kundalini lean the mannequin against a post.
Yeah, and I really enjoy the delivery that Hugh Keys-Byrne gives here.
Oh, yes.
The way he just pronounces their names, because it almost seems to add a little bit of extra characterization to them. Like when he says Mudguts, he yells Mudguts, and then when he says Kundalini, he goes Kundalini.
Yes, there's just so much personality in the way that he speaks. It's wonderful.
Yeah, it's great. But he wants Mudguts to get out of there because Mudguts is just going to get in the way, and then he wants Kundalini to put the mannequin over by a post so that he can have a bit of an object lesson, assumedly. So what I like about this is that after getting everyone's attention, every time Toecutter speaks, he has everyone's undivided attention and concentration. Despite how rowdy the gang was in the last minute yesterday, here they are 100% fixed on everything he's saying. And Mudguts, which is usually just dumping around like a monkey, I mean, he immediately just freezes and obeys when he's given an order. And I find it interesting when Toecutter tells Kundalini to put the mannequin against the post. Like, one of the first things that Kundalini does is he stands up straight and he takes off his sunglasses. Because there's that whole thing about, when you're talking to someone, and you're in a situation where you're not in a blindingly bright area and you have the ability to take off your sunglasses, you take off your sunglasses so they can see your eyes. It's a respect thing.
Definitely. Up to this point, in this scene at least, they have been, rowdy, goofing around, very undisciplined group. When in reality, they actually are very disciplined. He gave a signal that it was time to pay attention, and they immediately like switch into respect mode.
Mm-hmm.
So I think they actually are quite disciplined. They just know when they don't have to be and when they do have to be.
Yeah. Toecutter's really good about giving them enough leeway on these, theoretical leashes, these mental leashes that he has them on. He can let them out enough that they can let loose and have fun, but as soon as he pulls on that leash, like you said, they snap right too.
Yes.
So Toecutter gives a couple of instructions, and then he kind of launches into this little speech of his, where he starts off by saying, "We have a problem here." And just that first line, he has this weird little inflection in his voice where he says, "problem here," where here kind of ends with not a full laugh, but it's sort of like an uptick where it's almost like he wants to chuckle at the idea that, someone would want to mess with them. That the idea of them being challenged by the bronze is just laughable to him, the very situation of it.
We don't know a lot about this gang's history, but I kind of assume we talked several episodes about movies covering the most interesting part of a protagonist's life.
Right.
So kind of along those same lines, I would assume that this is the most interesting part of the gang's life too. So I don't think that before now they have really been questioned by anybody.
Yeah.
Like they, when the gang first started or was handed over to Toecutter, he established his authority within his gang, within the community, and it hasn't been questioned in this way since then.
That's an excellent point. I didn't think of that before. The idea that they probably have been running under the radar enough that this is the first time they've really had a major run-in where one of their top members was taken out by the police, and that the police have actually, taken into custody another member of the gang. Mm-hmm. And for all intents and purposes, they kind of got out of this situation just because of luck. The fact that no one showed up to testify against them is pretty lucky.
Well, I don't think it was luck. I think that the gang intimidated anybody who could testify against them into not showing up. Very modern day mob-like.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it was their doing that nobody showed up for the trial. I didn't take it to be an accident.
But yeah, where they are being actively challenged by an antagonist to them, this is a problem that Toecutter really needs to adjust, or he really has to. This is a problem that Toecutter has to address, definitely. So he goes on to say that this mannequin is not what she seems, and I think we interpreted this slightly different because he says she is not what she seems. Bubba Zanetti has it on good authority. She's sent by the bronze, full of treachery.
Yeah, I took that to mean a bronze spy. Someone who is reporting back to the bronze on their location, their motivations, their plans, which didn't make a lot of sense to me because the idea of a spy hasn't come up before.
Yeah.
And hasn't been suspected by us before. So it seems a little bit out of place to me.
Yeah. I read it more as the mannequin in this instance is not so much like a tracking device or a listening device, but is more just an illustration for a metaphor that Toecutter wants to launch into. He basically wants to illustrate to the gang that as he's speaking, and for his purposes, this mannequin is going to represent the bronze. He wants to basically tell them that the problem that they have is that the bronze are after them, and we have a plan to deal with them. And so he motions over to Bubba Zanetti, who is holding this little wooden box thing, which we're going to find out what that is in a couple of moments. But he motions over to Bubba and is sort of saying to the gang, okay, we have a problem with the bronze. Bubba is going to demonstrate how we're going to deal with this situation. And he wants to convey this idea without coming right out and saying it. He is a fan of the subtlety.
Oh, certainly. Toecutter, for all of his larger-than-life-ness, is actually very subtle in the way he speaks to people.
Certainly.
Toecutter says that Bubba has it on good authority. And when did Bubba... I don't know where he got that from. Bubba never said anything to him about the bronze or the mannequin or anything. He said something about frivolity. That's the last time he said a line, was about frivolity is a game of children.
Yeah.
So when did they come up with this plan that Toecutter was going to do the intro and let Bubba do this object lesson? when did they come up with this plan?
Yeah.
I mean, is their relationship just such that Toecutter said these things and Bubba knew what he was supposed to do?
I would like to think that Bubba has been running with Toecutter long enough that they don't necessarily need to plan things out so much as Bubba's really good at reading the intentions of Toecutter and going along with them. Because when Toecutter begins his speech, Bubba is already prepared. He already has, that little wooden package I mentioned earlier, which is actually just a gun with like a fancy carrying case. Like he already has it ready to go. So this might even be something that they planned ahead of time. Maybe they talked to the side, because Clunk comes back with this mannequin and then Toecutter immediately wants to use this mannequin in an object lesson. So it's almost like, did Clunk randomly come back with the mannequin? Is the whole thing completely off the cuff? I almost have the suspicion that Clunk was sent out by Toecutter and saying, hey, find me something like this,
That kind of makes sense, because we don't usually see the gang members separated from each other.
Right.
I mean, we saw Johnny separated from them, and that just didn't turn out that great. So Clunk was separated. He left the group by himself. So maybe he was sent. Yeah,
we see... Okay, so Johnny is left behind at the crash seat. Bubba is sent back to get Johnny. And then in the next scene where everyone's together, Clunk is returning with the mannequin. So I have a feeling that Toecutter is in the habit of sending gang members out to do specific things.
Yeah.
So I think it's very reasonable to say that this entire scene was prearranged by Toecutter as he planned it with Bubba and then instructed Clunk to go, find something that they could use. And he just came back with the mannequin. And it worked out well for Toecutter's plan.
I do feel like that takes some of the gravitas out of the demonstration from Toecutter. I kind of prefer the idea that it was off the cuff and that he and Bubba were like reading each other.
Yeah.
Because it gives Toecutter more power. But it's also I think it's more realistic that he had this planned out. That he sent Clunk out. I think that's more realistic. But the whole thing being off the cuff lends more to the persona and the legend that Toecutter is.
I think it's more important for it to appear off the cuff and unplanned than it is to actually be unplanned. I think there's a lot that Toecutter does behind the scenes that the other gang members don't necessarily see. Yeah. And so Bubba is probably allowed to hear a lot more than the other gang members.
Yes, I do get that sense that he's Toecutter's, right-hand man, of course. Maybe not confidant, but maybe along those lines.
Right.
Someone that the Toecutter can talk to more than he can talk to the gang as a whole.
Mm-hmm. So after the Toecutter mentions that the mannequin is sent by the Bronze, full of treachery, he uses a phrase, the Bronze take our pride. And this is an idea that kind of crops up in later minutes down the road. But that's kind of the unofficial signal to Bubba for him to step forward and, demonstrate what they're going to do to the Bronze who take their pride. And as he steps forward, he has a gun. And this, according to the Internet Movie Database, is a Mauser C96 broom handle. And it's one of the first handguns that has like the integrated magazine there. It's actually a pretty iconic little firearm because it's just so recognizable from its shape. It's got, like I said, the box magazine in the front, the long thin barrel, and it's got that handle, which gave it its nickname in English, the broom handle, because it's just this little, broom handly looking thing. Interestingly enough, in China, the broom handle was given a different nickname. It was called the box cannon, primarily because the magazine is kind of boxy shaped, but that wooden box that Bubba was holding earlier is actually a detachable stock that can connect to the handle of the Mauser C96. So you can essentially turn it into like a small rifle or something like that. But when you don't have it in rifle mode, that stock has a little hinge at the back and you just slip the whole gun in there.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's a nifty little thing for him to have as he steps forward.
It's German, I take it?
Yeah.
Okay, it reminds me of something that you would see in Indiana Jones and Search for the Holy Grail.
Yeah, one of those.
With the Nazis.
Yeah, one of the Nazi ones.
Yeah, lots of Nazis.
Yeah. There's 2 Nazi ones, 1 Indian cultist, and then 1 Cold War Russians, I think is the other one that no one talks about.
Yeah. So yeah, when I saw it in the movie, I immediately thought of Indiana Jones.
It's not a bad thing to think of.
No, not
Absolutely
at all.
not.
So almost at the same time, slightly after, when Bubba starts walking forward, Johnny also jumps into action.
Oh yeah, he notices that Bubba has a gun and he's stepping towards the mannequin. And I think Johnny is picking up on what Toecutter has to say. In this little blurb that we get, he doesn't come right out and say that they're going to answer insult to injury. He doesn't specifically say that they are going to kill police officers because the police officers are directly challenging their enterprise. But Johnny is looking at the mannequin, who Toecutter essentially said represents the bronze. He's looking at Bubba, who has the gun, who is stepping forward. And I think it's at that point Johnny starts putting two and two together and he springs into action. Which,
springing into action while you're hanging out on a beach, is just not great. Because he seems to be fighting through the sand during the whole thing that he does here. So he lunges towards Toecutter, grabs the shotgun, which is pretty ballsy, grabbing the shotgun from your gang boss. Grabs the shotgun, kind of runs in front of Bubba.
As he's trying to aim.
Not
very safe.
And he's already like half fallen down by the time he gets off his two shots. The whole thing is very clumsy, which he would have been clumsy anyways because he's a clumsy person. He doesn't have the style. Exactly what Bubba says in a couple of seconds. But add the sand into that where he never has good footing, never has control over even his own body or real control over the gun. So what he does is not only very dangerous, but spastic.
Yeah. And the fact that the first shot from the shotgun hits the mannequin in the chest and the second shot hits the mannequin in the face.
We both have problems with this.
Yeah.
Different problems.
Yeah. I think your problem with the scene stems directly from what you were just talking about.
Yes, the sand. So he kind of runs into position, already half fallen down. He shoots from the hip, and he manages to hit the mannequin twice.
Yeah, and I mean...
I just don't believe it. I know that shotguns are extremely easy to hit your target with, and he was pretty close to them. So I'll give him that, but I still don't think that both shots would have hit the mannequin so well with the circumstances of him shooting.
Yeah, I have more of a problem with the fact that he hit the mannequin twice.
Absolutely.
Because what he's holding, once again, went back to the Internet Firearms Database, he's holding a VG Bentley double-barreled shotgun. Now, the shotgun itself is pretty interesting, but the whole idea of a double-barreled shotgun is that each barrel, as you open the breech, is able to hold one shell. You fire off your two shots, you open the breech again, you take the empty shells out, you put the new shell in. You know, that's not groundbreaking stuff. What is kind of world-breaking stuff is that Toecutter's sitting there, he fires off one shot from the shotgun. Okay, that is one shell expired. There is one remaining. We, at no point, because I paid very close attention to everything this shotgun did in this minute, there is never one point where someone opens up the breech, empties out the empty shell, and puts in a new one. And so Johnny running over and firing off two shots, that's just magic. It's like the movie Maverick, where he just has a never-ending six-shooter.
Yes. It seems to be a common Hollywood trope.
Yeah. And I mean, bonus points for it being Maverick because it's another Mel Gibson movie, but at the same time... like, killing me with this continuity here. So, like I said, there's an interesting thing about this shotgun specifically, because it's theorized by people who have paid attention to these things that there was only really one VG Bentley used in this movie, because there's a couple different times we see it. The first time when we see Roop with the double-barreled shotgun, that's a VG Bentley. We see it again in this scene, and then down the road we're going to see it again when Jesse is being threatened by the gang in the woods and Max goes in to check out the situation. That's another VG Bentley. And then at the end of the movie, when Max has his sawed-off double-barrel shotgun, that's a VG Bentley as well. And in fact, eagle-eyed viewers have noted that there's a small white ring around the base of the grip in the sawed-off shotgun that's very similar to the one seen here. And then apparently there's something with like the proportions of the receiver and the checkering pattern on the locking screw on the forearm are all very similar. So it would seem that this shotgun that Toecutter is using just happens to be the same one that Roop was using, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, which kind of makes sense considering they had such a small budget on the movie that if you've got a working shotgun, maybe you don't have to buy 3 more.
Yes. Yeah, no reason to buy 3 when you just need 1.
Yeah, it's just funny that it seems this one shotgun is just being passed around to all these different things. And I guess you can kind of imagine, like, maybe in universe after Roop and Charlie slide into the sign, he dropped the shotgun out of the window or something like that. But when you try and connect it that specifically, it gets really convoluted very fast. I've tried and it does not work.
Yeah.
But as the mannequin falls into the sand, we get Johnny spinning around and just kneeling in the sand as he lets out this just exclamation of, if you're going to waste the bronze, you got to do it big. And where Toecutter was going for subtlety and metaphor, Johnny is just coming right out and saying it. And I feel like that goes very much against what Toecutter is trying to go for, and it's exactly why Bubba thinks that Johnny just doesn't have the style.
Yeah, Johnny, when you interrupt somebody's metaphor, you take a huge risk because the nature of metaphor, there's so much subtlety to it. Mm-hmm. You could start out with a metaphor and take it several directions. So Johnny, assuming that he knew where Toecutter was going with his metaphor, was very risky. And I don't think he hit the nail on the head. I don't think that Toecutter was going for wasting the bronze or doing it big.
Right.
I think he was going more for retribution with precision.
Oh, absolutely.
Because that's what Bubba was. Bubba was approaching the shot with a handgun, taking careful aim. So I see precision in that. Planning, knowing what's going to happen, and then in swoops Johnny with this flailing, lucky to hit the mannequin in the head. And it's just not, it's like the complete opposite of where I think Toecutter was going with his metaphor.
Mm-hmm. I feel like Toecutter is much more apt at psychologically terrorizing people. I think we'll see that much later when he confronts Jesse at the farmhouse.
Ooh,
after
yes.
they run into each other at the ice cream parlor and in the woods.
And the scene at the ice cream parlor,
I mean, that
also is, yeah.
Yeah, it's something else. But Johnny is of the opinion that they should be going all out and just being very over the top about it. Mm-hmm. And, Toecutter's just not like that.
No, and Toecutter's the boss for a reason.
Exactly. He knows how to slow burn the situation.
Yes, for a greater chance at success.
Yeah. I think Johnny's assumption and overreaction to the situation definitely highlights, I think, how new to the gang he is. Mm-hmm. Toecutter probably sees a lot of potential in him. Bubba certainly doesn't like him. And I think, he's got a lot to learn, and as Toecutter says, he needs to be taught. And he thinks that he's going to be the one to teach him. And coming tomorrow, Toecutter puts Johnny in a situation where it's a lot of one-on-one instruction. Mm-hmm. Maybe not a lot, but it says more than it actually has in dialogue, for sure.
Yes, for sure.
Join us tomorrow for that nice little interaction. In the meantime, our website is madmaxminute.com. You can follow us on Twitter at madmaxminute and like us on Facebook at facebook.com/madmaxminute.
Thank you for joining us for Mad Max Minute number 38. We'll see you tomorrow.
Motorbikes and leather men, take me to the edge of the dream. Hold on tight.